Welcome back to DFC Books, where we take a deep dive into the literature that shapes our conversations and sometimes profoundly changes the way we see the world.
It's good to be back.
If you have a book you want us to dive into next, please let us know in the comments. We pore over your requests, and this week we're tackling one that comes up a lot.
We are. It's a powerful one, and frankly, a deeply unsettling novel of the modern era. John Boyne's The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas.
It is a profound choice, and I think a necessary one for a deep dive like this.
I agree. This novel is celebrated. You see quotes like powerful and unsettling, deeply affecting, but it's also, often debated.
Right.
And Boyne's stated core interest was exploring how the massive impersonal horror of war affects and just utterly destroys the experience of childhood, a time that should be about safety and carefree exploration.
And what makes this novel so unique, and I think the source of so much of its power, is its narrative device. It's all told from a very specific point of view.
It is. And we know Boyne started with one simple, almost abstract image that launched the entire story.
What was that?
It was purely visual. He pictured two young boys sitting on either side of a high wire fence, just talking to each other.
Wow.
And he became interested in the journey that brought them to that exact spot.
Yeah.
The conversations they would have that would show, both their similarities and their impossibly different realities.
And the ending.
And, most chillingly, the necessary end that their story was, destined to reach. The novel is really an allegory built around Bruno's staggering and some would say willful ignorance.
So our mission today is to act as your guides through the source material, the narrative itself. We'll be exploring the main characters, the dramatic relocation from vibrant Berlin to this mysterious, isolated place called Outwith.
And how their parallel lives collide in that devastating final adventure.
Exactly. We're going to examine how Boyne uses Bruno's extreme naivete as a lens to filter the stark horror of the environment.
Which allows us, the reader, to fully appreciate the trajectory of the story.
Yeah.
It goes from simple childish confusion to this inevitable personal tragedy for the Commandant's own family.
And we'll really zero in on the literary mechanics, how the misinterpretation of names, the symbolism of the clothing, and the use of this unreliable narrator transform a historical tragedy into something very personal.
Into a personal, unforgettable parable about the price of willful denial.
Okay, let's unpack this with Bruno, our 9-year-old protagonist. The novel starts by establishing his life as this bubble of security and adventure.
It really does.
When we first meet him, his life in Berlin sounds, privileged and happy. What details does the source material give us to paint that picture of innocence?
We get a very specific snapshot of an upper-class childhood in Berlin. Bruno loves his life because it offers him two things, really: structure and exploration.
Okay, so structure comes from where?
The structure comes from his social life. His three best friends for life, Carl, Daniel, and Martin. The very serious way kids talk about friendship.
And the exploration.
That comes from his home life. Specifically, the architectural wonder that is his family's 5-floor house.
A 5-floor house in Berlin.
Exactly. And we get this wonderful detail about him sliding down the banister, which is this highly competitive, multi-floor activity that, defined his free time.
He's small for his age, which I think already hints at his relative powerlessness in the adult world. But what really defines his innocence is his total lack of comprehension regarding his father's job.
That ignorance is absolutely essential to the narrative. It's the engine of the whole story.
How so?
Well, when his friends talked about their fathers being a greengrocer or a teacher or a chef, Bruno could only offer these vague, glorious descriptors.
Like what?
He'd say his father was a man to watch, that he had a fantastic uniform, and that a powerful figure, the Fury, had big things in mind for him.
So he genuinely doesn't know what his father does.
Not at all. Only that it makes him important and means he gets respect and special treatment.
And that bubble bursts almost immediately. The central event of the very first chapter is Bruno arriving home from school to find Maria, the maid, packing his belongings.
It's all decided. The decision has already been made unilaterally by father and the Fury, who, we learn, had recently dined at their home in a scene that obviously precipitated this whole move.
And this move is the first real crack we see in the family unit, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We have to note Mother's palpable distress. The text describes her sighing and threw her hands in the air in frustration.
So it's clear she is not supporting this change with any enthusiasm.
Not at all, despite trying to present a unified front to her son. When Bruno asks if they're moving far, she laughs strangely and says, "It's more than a mile away. Quite a lot more than that, in fact."
That strange forced laugh.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it? It's about her realization that she has lost control over her life because of her husband's ambition.
And the new place itself, which Bruno and his sister Gretel eventually call out with, is just a profound and shocking contrast to Berlin.
It's the immediate physical manifestation of the father's ideology completely dominating their family life.
The contrast is everything.
It is. In Berlin, his neighborhood was defined by its sensory richness. Strolling people, bright shops, and those wonderful fruit and vegetable stalls whose mixed sense of sweetness and life made his head dizzy.
And out with.
Out with, by contrast,
Yeah.
is a smaller, isolated three-floor house with only one bathroom and a servant's basement. And most critically, it lacks neighbors.
Yeah.
It lacks shops. It lacks that vibrant chaos he associated with home and happiness.
It's a vacuum.
It's a total vacuum, and Bruno notes that everyone there, Mother, Gretel, even Maria, seems profoundly unhappy. The family has been physically exiled to accommodate the father's power.
And speaking of the father, the source emphasizes his role as a man to watch with a fantastic uniform. He's seen as a rising star by his employer. But the novel goes to great lengths to show that Bruno only understands the aesthetics.
Yes, not the function of his father's power.
Exactly.
And that's right. Boyne makes the father the classic example of the man who believes his atrocities are simply a matter of, high-level bureaucracy and efficiency.
He's presented as kind to his family, in a very narrow domestic sense.
Which makes the reality of his professional life all the more disturbing. The uniform is pristine, starched, and decorated. It's the ultimate symbol of his separation from the moral world.
How so?
The uniform itself is designed to make the wearer feel important, above question, and entirely removed from the consequences of his actions.
So the narrative takes its pivotal turn when Bruno and Gretel examine the view from his bedroom window. This is the moment the external horror really starts to leak into their privileged interior space.
It is. And Gretel, who he calls the hopeless case, at 12 years old, she tries to intellectualize this terrifying view.
And Gretel's response is fascinating because it sort of mirrors how society attempts to rationalize or ignore suffering.
Exactly. She tries desperately to use her limited intellect to explain the horror away. She believes the view must be the countryside, where farmers are and the animals, growing food to feed the city.
But even her forced logic breaks down pretty quickly.
It does. Bruno is the one who points out the obvious facts. There are no animals, no cows, pigs, sheep, or horses, and the ground is just this sand-like, dusty substance, clearly unfit for growing anything.
And then there's the shocking reality that supersedes Gretel's denial. The site of the compound itself.
Yeah, we see the description of the high-wire fence, topped with these enormous bales of barbed wire tangled in spirals, which the book says causes Gretel to feel an unexpected pain inside her.
And beyond the fence?
Beyond the fence, it's low huts, large square buildings, and those distant, perpetually smoking chimneys.
The fence is the central metaphor of the entire novel, isn't it?
It has to be. It's not just a physical boundary, it's a psychological one. It separates the perpetrators from their victims, and more importantly, it separates the reality of the atrocities from the comfort of the family home.
And the inhabitants are the most shocking element for them.
Hundreds of people, men, boys, grandfathers, all wearing the exact same attire. Gray striped pajamas and matching caps.
And Bruno makes this connection.
He does. He notes that everyone in his house wears a uniform, and everyone outside wears the pajamas. And he starts wondering about the difference and, who decided who wore which.
This distinction, the uniform versus the pajamas, becomes the book's central, devastating allegory for dehumanization.
It really does.
And of course, we have to address the famous misinterpretation of the place name, which is a literary device Boyne uses again and again.
Yes, out with.
Bruno and Gretel call it out with, believing it means getting out with the people who lived here before us. This is just Bruno's child's brain trying to simplify a complex, institutional reality.
The irony is horrific. Boyne never explicitly names the place in Bruno's narrative, but the reader understands that out with is Auschwitz.
Just as they understand that the Fury is Bruno's mishearing of Der Führer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This technique is Boyne's way of forcing the reader to interpret the true nature of the events through the lens of a child's comprehension. It prevents the book from becoming a direct historical recounting.
And instead frames it as a fable about innocence and ignorance.
Precisely. We even get the detail that the name is subtly confirmed to the reader, though not to Bruno, by the bronze plaque on a bench near the house. It reads, "Presented on the occasion of the opening of Out With Camp, June 1940.
And he even touches it.
He reaches out and touches the bronze plaque, completely ignorant of its chilling historical significance.
So Boyne uses Bruno as an unreliable narrator, not because he lies, but because he just lacks the conceptual framework to understand what he's seeing.
Exactly. And this allows the reader to experience the horror of the place without it ever having to be explicitly stated in historical terms.
And Bruno, understandably miserable and lonely in this new, desolate place, he tries to find a way back to normalcy.
He does. In a classic childhood move, he breaks the cardinal rule. He knocks on the door of Father's new office, which is marked out of bounds at all times and no exceptions.
And this happens right after Father holds this loud, joyous meeting with 5 other soldiers.
Right. They salute him and cry out the 2 words Bruno learned to say, Heil Hitler. And Father emphasizes that here they have a fresh beginning.
That interaction with his father it feels like the point of no return for their relationship. Bruno is seeking comfort and answers, but his father can only offer evasion and dismissal.
It's the father's core ideology revealed in that moment.
Yeah.
When Bruno asks about the people in the striped pajamas, Father dismisses them outright. He says, those people. Well, they're not people at all, Bruno.
Chilling.
And he tells his son he shouldn't be worrying about them. This is the official, dehumanizing language of the regime being used directly on his own child.
And the father just can't conceive of his new position being misunderstood as a punishment, as Bruno had suggested.
No, he genuinely believes his work is noble and important, and any questioning of the move is just a failure to appreciate his success.
But Bruno, he's trying to reconcile the kind, supportive man he knows with this cold commandant who ordered the move.
So he questions Maria, the maid, about them being brought there against their will.
And Maria acknowledges the collective misery. We're all in the same boat, she says, and it's leaking. This is where the narrative gives us a glimpse into the profound moral conflict surrounding the father.
Maria's testimony is vital for understanding the complexity of life under totalitarianism, especially the moral compromises made by those who benefit from the powerful.
What does she reveal?
She reveals this profound personal debt of loyalty she owes to the father. Her own mother, who had been a dresser for Bruno's grandmother during her concerts, was looked after by him.
Oh, wow.
The father personally paid for Maria's sick mother's hospital care, and even covered the funeral expenses when she died. He showed intense personal kindness.
So that act of personal generosity makes her current distress so poignant. How can the same man who showed such empathy and care in one realm be capable of orchestrating unimaginable cruelty in another?
That's the core dilemma of the character. She concludes that father has a lot of kindness in his soul, truly he does, which makes me wonder how he can what?
She just trails off.
She can't say it. She's unable to reconcile the kind man who saved her family with the commandant who runs this horrific place. Her silence is a necessary survival strategy.
So she gives Bruno some advice.
Solid, if tragically misguided, advice. She says, we must all just keep ourselves safe until this is all over. That's what I intend to do anyway. What more can we do than that after all? It's not up to us to change things.
This idea of passive survival defines the whole moral atmosphere of the house.
Absolutely. So we established this critical tension in part 1.
Mm-hmm.
The father's successful, powerful life relies on the systematic dehumanization of millions.
But that very power has isolated his own family and caused immense moral pain at those closest to him, leading to the beginning of the end of his perfect domestic life.
And that tension of isolation is what drives Bruno into action. He internalizes Maria's advice to keep safe, but he also focuses on that idea of exploration.
He's driven by intense loneliness. Gretel is focused only on her dolls, who he calls a hopeless case.
Right, so he decides to revive his passion for being an explorer.
This happens right after their new tutor, Hairless, arrives. And Hairless is clearly a product of the regime, isn't he?
Oh, clearly. He insists that history and geography, specifically German history and geography, are far more important than storybooks about knights and adventure.
The irony there is so sharp.
It is. By telling Bruno to focus on history and geography, Herr List inadvertently forces Bruno to go out and physically explore his new geography.
Which immediately leads him to a piece of history the regime desperately wants concealed.
Bruno rebels against the academic focus and walks for miles along the fence, past the point where the huts and buildings disappear behind him until he spots a dot.
Which becomes a speck.
Then a blob, then a figure, and finally a boy.
And this is the moment the whole narrative hinges on, the famous chapter title, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
He finds Shmuel, quiet, skinny, sitting cross-legged on the dirt on the opposite side of the fence. Shmuel is Polish, but he speaks German because his mama taught him.
And what's fascinating here is how Boyne establishes their foundational, undeniable commonality before he dives into their catastrophic differences.
The astonishing detail that grounds their connection is that they were born on the exact same day, April 15th, 1934.
Wow.
Bruno is astonished. He declares, "We're like twins." He feels very happy because he has a friend again. This shared birthday is the ultimate allegorical tool. It tells the reader that on a fundamental human level, they are identical.
Yet their fates are impossibly polarized.
Exactly.
Shmuel then recounts his life before the camp, and this narrative provides the stark reality check against Bruno's privileged existence.
It really does. He lived in Krakow, Poland. First, he had to wear an armband with a Star of David whenever he left the house.
Which Bruno innocently contrasts with his father's armband, which was bright red with a black and white design on it.
Right. The narrative just continues to escalate, Shmuel's tragedy. After the armband, Shmuel and his family were forced into a crowded room in the city where the soldiers built a wall.
How many people?
11 people total in one room, including a boy named Luca who hit him. He tells Bruno about the hunger, the fear, and the sheer physical discomfort. The novel systematically strips away Shmuel's home, his freedom, his dignity, and his personal space.
And the train journey highlights Bruno's blindness perfectly.
Oh, that scene is brutal. Shmuel tells Bruno it was awful, crowded, and smelled bad.
And Bruno, remembering the two trains at the station when he left Berlin, tells Shmuel he should have taken the other one.
The one with doors and a buffet section.
And Shmuel's reply is just devastating in its simplicity.
There weren't any doors.
And Bruno finds this completely illogical. He can only see the world through the lens of organized, comfortable travel. He can't grasp the concept of forced relocation.
He literally cannot conceive of a train car without doors or a buffet. This is where the unreliable narrator device is most powerful because it forces the reader to constantly interpret the truth behind Bruno's innocent misunderstandings.
Before we move on to the internal tensions of Bruno's home, let me pause for a quick moment for a request. If you're finding this deep dive insightful and want more analysis like this, please subscribe to DFC Books. Your support helps us dedicate the time to unpack these incredible stories, sentence by sentence, event by event.
The relationship with Shmuel continues, of course, but the dangers around Bruno's family just escalate. The house becomes this pressure cooker of ambition, fear, and moral decay.
And we are introduced to two key contrasting figures who really define the atmosphere, Lieutenant Kotler and Pavel.
Yes, Lieutenant Kotler embodies the face of institutionalized cruelty. Bruno immediately dislikes him.
He's described as nasty and hostile with this unnatural blonde hair.
Always looking like he's trying to find someone to cut out of his will. He addresses Bruno dismissively as little man and is clearly flirting with Gretel and Mother.
Which adds another layer of unsettling tension within the household.
It does. And in direct contrast is Pavel, the man in the striped pajamas who peels the family's vegetables and serves dinner.
Pavel's quiet capability is revealed when he treats Bruno's knee after he falls off that uncomfortable tire swing.
Right, the swing he built with Pavel's help. And Pavel reveals, in this quiet, matter-of-fact way, that he was a doctor before arriving at Outwith.
That's a crucial detail. It confirms the sophisticated reality of the victims and the deliberate cruelty of forcing highly skilled people into menial servitude as part of the dehumanization process.
It's a huge moment.
The narrative also uses family gatherings to highlight the rising internal dissent against father's work. Let's zero in on that Christmas disaster party in Berlin, which happened just before the move.
Oh, that's a key scene. Father wore his new, decorated starched uniform, and it prompted applause from grandfather, who was immensely proud that his son was elevated to such a responsible position, helping your country reclaim her pride.
But the moral compass of the novel, brief as her appearance is grandmother Natalie.
Absolutely. She was the only one unimpressed. She saw the uniform not as a symbol of achievement, but as a costume for a moral failure.
What did she say?
She called father a puppet on a string and declared that his uniform made her want to tear the eyes from my head.
Wow.
And this deep family disagreement about father's political involvement and the meaning of his uniform causes her to storm out. Bruno doesn't see her again before they move. Her dissent is a powerful moment, showing that not all Germans were silent.
And the paranoia and danger within the regime itself are exposed during a tense dinner scene at Outwith when Lieutenant Kotler is present.
Yes. Father aggressively questions Kotler about his own father, a literature professor who left Germany for Switzerland in 1938.
Father's voice is described as being deep, designed to silence and intimidate.
And he suggests that Kotler's father might have had disagreements with government policy, implying suspicion that he was one of the cowards or traitors who opposed their ideals.
Which shows the regime eats its own. Even Father, the commandant, is constantly vetting those around him, forcing Kotler to distance himself from his own father.
And this external political pressure heightens the sense of danger within the house. It proves that even on the safe side of the fence, no one is truly secure.
And here is where the moral weight of Bruno's innocence finally collapses into moral failure. The ultimate low point in the friendship, and the major chapter event in this middle section, is Bruno's betrayal of Shmuel.
It's a horrible moment. Shmuel is brought into the kitchen to polish glasses because they needed someone with his tiny fingers.
And Shmuel, already skeletal and frail, is clearly suffering.
He is. And Bruno, delighting in having his friend nearby, offers him stolen slices of cold chicken and stuffing. It's an act of genuine friendship, but also a naive one. He doesn't grasp the gravity of the transgression.
And Lieutenant Kotler, ever the hostile figure, catches them.
He does. When interrogated, Kotler demands to know if Bruno gave Shmuel food. And Bruno. He's terrified of the angry soldier. He completely denies it.
He lies and says he's never seen Shmuel before, prioritizing his own safety instantly.
It is a devastating moment because Bruno, our innocent protagonist, chooses denial and self-preservation over loyalty. Kotler accepts Bruno's lie, because why would the commandant's son associate with that kind?
And then he proceeds to threaten Shmuel.
Which leads to Shmuel being severely beaten. The next week, Shmuel shows up at the fence with extensive bruising on his face, looking even smaller and more broken.
And Bruno is overcome with shame.
He is. He apologizes profusely, declaring, "I'm very sorry, Shmuel. I can't believe I didn't tell him the truth. I've never let a friend down like that before. Shmuel, I'm ashamed of myself."
This moment marks the true loss of Bruno's innocence. He learns that the boundaries are real and the consequences of crossing them, even accidentally, are fatal.
As we move toward the novel's conclusion, the strain of Outwith is visibly affecting the family. It's mirroring the moral decay that's happening just outside the fence.
Right, and Gretel, the hopeless case, starts to transition from childhood fantasy to institutional ideology.
Her transformation is perfectly visualized through her possessions. She sheds her dolls entirely, putting them into 4 large bags and just throwing them away.
And in their place.
In their place, she hangs up maps of Europe, given to her by father, and spends her time tracking military progress. This shift symbolizes her journey from passive innocence to active, albeit still naive, engagement with her father's destructive world.
She and Bruno even discuss the difference between Jews on the other side and the opposite, which is what they call themselves.
And Gretel, now 13 and growing more sophisticated, insists they are the opposite. She's neatly compartmentalizing their world based on the ideology father has instilled in the house.
And the atmosphere of filth around the camp literally infiltrates the family home.
Yes, when both children get lice. Mother is furious. She says, "I knew something like this would happen in a place like this."
She's assigning blame not to her husband's job, but to the environment he forced upon them.
Exactly. And this leads to father making a critical narrative choice. He shaves Bruno's head.
That seemingly minor action is a major plot mechanism.
It is. With his head shaved, Bruno looks misshapen and scary to himself. But critically, he now looks physically identical to the boys on the other side of the fence. This small detail sets the stage for the final disguise and the fatal confusion of identity.
And the underlying domestic crisis escalates, ultimately leading to the chapter event where Mother gets her own way.
Right. Bruno overhears Mother shouting at father, "You call this work? I can't stand it anymore." And this isn't an ideological protest. This is a personal, emotional breakdown over her family's quality of life.
And Father, though still clinging to his ambition, he worries aloud about people questioning his commitment to the work if they leave.
But the reality of Gretel's sudden ideological shift, combined with Mother's despair, forces his hand. Father ultimately calls the children in and announces the move back to Berlin.
He admits, after Gretel agrees that Outwith is not a place for children, that she is absolutely right. Mother, Gretel, and Bruno will leave Outwith and return to their old house.
And this decision is a colossal failure for the commandant. His family's departure is an admission that his important job has cost him the sanctity and stability of his domestic sphere. The job itself is literally toxic to his children.
So when Bruno shares the news of his imminent departure with Shmuel, the friend is already distraught.
He is. Shmuel is crying because his grandfather has disappeared from the camp without a trace. This is the simple, heartbreaking reality of the camp. People disappear forever, often after being taken on marches.
And Bruno, ever the innocent, tries to offer a simple, comforting explanation.
Yeah, that his grandfather was taken to work in another town and that he'll turn up soon. Shmuel is inconsolable because the people who go on the marches are never seen again.
The reality of the Holocaust of death is filtering into Bruno's perception, but he still refuses to fully process it.
And this impending separation drives Bruno to propose one final grand adventure, transforming Shmuel's tragedy into an exploration game.
He suggests they go together into the camp to find evidence of Shmuel's father, who had disappeared sometime earlier.
And the logic of the plan is rooted in Bruno's recent haircut. Since Bruno's head is already shaved, he suggests wearing the gray striped pajamas so they look identical.
Which would enable him to crawl under the fence.
Exactly. Shmuel agrees to find a spare uniform from the hut where they keep them. They agree to meet the next day, Friday, for the mission.
It's a moment of immense, devastating irony. Despite his previous encounter with the sickly and beaten Shmuel, Bruno still envisions the camp as a place where children might be playing football.
Or families might be sitting on rocking chairs telling stories, an extension of the Berlin neighborhood he longs for.
He sees the pajamas not as a mark of victimization, but as a costume for disguise, a necessary prop for his final exploration.
And the final chapter event, What Happened the Next Day, details the tragic, inevitable execution of their plan. Despite heavy rain and mud, Bruno is determined to go.
He puts on his boots and heavy raincoat, changes into the striped pajamas, and rolls under the wire where Shmuel lifts the loose base of the fence.
And he laughs, declaring he's never been so filthy in all his life and it felt wonderful, still clinging to the joy of adventure.
But the reality of the camp immediately shatters Bruno's illusion.
The air is foul, the ground is filthy, and it's not full of happy families or games. It is filled with sickly, skinny people with shaved heads, surrounded by shouting soldiers carrying guns.
He quickly realizes his exploration is terrible. It's not an adventure at all.
They search fruitlessly for Shmuel's father for an hour and a half, finding no evidence of him or any other missing people. As it starts to get dark, Bruno decides he wants to go home.
He's overwhelmed by the fear and the stench. But it is too late.
They are suddenly swept up into a large group of people being forced to march by soldiers, accompanied by the sound of whistles. Bruno is scared, realizing he is trapped in the center of the crowd.
He's longing to be back in his house watching the compound from a safe distance. He has crossed the physical fence and, in doing so, has destroyed his own psychological fence of denial.
And the crowd is marched into a long, warm room. The text avoids any explicit description of the gas chamber, maintaining Bruno's naive perspective until the final moment.
As the group shuffles into the room, Bruno grabs Shmuel's hand, holding it tight.
He does. And he says the most poignant sentence of the novel, an absolute declaration of their shared humanity in the face of annihilation. He tells Shmuel he is his best friend for life.
Then the narrative just cuts away. It leaves the horrific conclusion to the reader's understanding.
And the immediate aftermath focuses solely on the commandant's family, the devastating consequence of his life's work. A search begins. A soldier discovers Bruno's discarded clothes and boots near the fence.
And Father, the commandant, examines the area and notices that the base of the fence is not properly attached to the ground here. It leaves a gap large enough for a small person to crawl underneath.
That small gap is the pivot point of the father's entire life. Boyne structured the whole novel for this moment. The loose base of the fence allows Father to follow it through logically, step by step by step.
He finally understands the specific, personal fate of his son.
He realizes that his dedication to his job has consumed the one thing he was ostensibly trying to protect, his own family.
The subsequent events are simply the slow, painful dismantling of the family unit.
They are. Mother stays it out with for several months, desperately waiting for news, until she returns to Berlin, half expecting to see him sitting on the doorstep waiting for her.
And Gretel returns to Berlin, spending her time alone and crying because she misses Bruno. Her focus has shifted from maps to sorrow.
And Father. Months later, he continues his job, seemingly functional but completely hollowed out. Then he is ordered away by other soldiers.
He goes without complaint.
He does. Because in that moment of terrible clarity, when he found the loose fence and connected the dots, he truly didn't mind what happened to him anymore. His entire foundation, his uniform, his importance, his ideology had been personally invalidated by the death of his son.
This is a story where innocence is not just lost, but actively consumed by the violence it tries to ignore.
It really is.
The emotional core of the narrative, the friendship between Bruno and Shmuel, is so powerful precisely because Bruno's naivete shields him until the very last moment. He steps into the uniform of the victim because he truly believed the difference between the two groups was merely a matter of clothing.
A reversible costume.
Exactly. What stands out is Boyne's success in framing this horrific historical event through the parallel experience of two children whose lives are disrupted by war, one inside the compound and one outside.
And the symbolism of the uniforms versus the pajamas becomes the central metaphor for the dehumanization process that Father himself championed. His devotion to his important job, the job of Commandant of Outwith, ironically led directly and logically to the destruction of his own immediate family.
It's the ultimate consequence of willful ignorance and unchecked ideology, but I think many critics raise the question, is Father's final quiet surrender truly repentance, or is it just the ultimate consequence of his ideology finally hitting home in a purely personal, selfish way?
That's a vital question. The source material suggests a complete internal collapse, rather than a moral awakening about the plight of the millions he slaughtered.
Right.
It's the moment of profound selfishness. He only cares when the horror crosses the fence and touches his child. He finally sees the necessary end of the story that Boyne foresaw, not an abstract political end, but a personal, crushing defeat.
And the story ends with that incredibly chilling postscript. Of course, all this happened a long time ago, and nothing like that could ever happen again, not in this day and age.
The irony in that final sentence is just so heavy. It invites us to contemplate the timeless nature of the warning embedded in the story about the dangers of classification, division, and denial.
A deeply affecting and unforgettable tale, defined by its simplicity and its tragic irony.
It really is.
Thank you for tuning in to DFC Books.